This is Leading Detection, a Sedulo podcast where fraud fighters talk tech. Back to the Leading Detection podcast, and today we're joined by Bobbie Chen, fraud and risk PM, and known for preventing account abuse and bot attacks. Bobbie, welcome and thank you for joining.
Hey, Matt. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited to chat. As Matt mentioned, I work at Twilio as a fraud and risk PM, and I'll just be open. These are my personal opinions. I'm not representing any official company stances here.
All opinions are your own. Love to hear it. Hopefully we can get some really deep insights from you, and what we're going to be covering today is kind of bots is a big one, why they got scarier, and also have a bit of a deep dive into the underground toolkit that the bad actors are leveraging at the moment. So first of all, why is it important that we're talking about this and today?
Yeah, I think from the earliest days of the internet, bots have always been a problem. But I think what I've seen at my work and what I've heard across the industry is that bots are increasingly a problem in a way that they weren't just a few years ago. And I think it is maybe a little on the nose here to say this is related to AI, but it is related to AI. And I think the way that it's related to AI is also interesting because when you hear AI powered bots or LLM enabled bots, a lot of people, they jump straight to computer use in which you have a video of a screen and you're giving the AI the power to go and click on buttons and move the mouse and do things just the way a human would. That's kind of the first thing that people's minds jump to. But I think actually what we see is that there's a lot more AI coding going on. And so previously you might have heard the term script kiddie. This is someone who has not a lot of technical skills, but they're able to go and copy some kind of script that does some botting attack against your website. And I think what we've seen in the last couple of years is that there's a natural evolution from script kiddie, you're copying something existing, to, I like this term, slop kiddie, in which you're prompting the AIs to generate custom scripts that target any website. And so just because of how easy it's become to do that, they're seeing a lot higher volume in bot attacks.
So what you're saying is the AI coding tools kind of lowered the bar for attackers,
Yes.
or what do you mean in super plain terms?
Yeah, exactly. The AI coding tools lower the bar. It is now much easier for any attacker to go and write a script that does something like tries and hacks into someone's account through something like credential stuffing, or creates a bunch of fake accounts just by scripting your account sign-up endpoint. And previously, there used to be a technical bar where you had to know a little bit in order to make that happen. And now you can say, ChatGPT, please write me a script that creates 1,000 accounts. And you don't need to know anything about how it works.
So what does that mean out in reality, out in the wild? So now this tool is available to a lot of people. The technical bar is lower. What's that caused?
Yeah, I think, from the consumer side, I think what it causes is actually just a lot more friction. There are a lot of sites these days where you go and you're like, oh, this looks interesting. Oh, to do something interesting, I need to go create an account. And then you go and you start to sign up, and then you click through oh, here's 20 traffic lights, here's 10 cars. Let me click through this thing. Let me wait for the big loading spinner. And then it hits okay, now I need to validate my phone number. Now I need to validate my email. And it adds a lot of steps. And I think that's really painful as an end user, but it's totally understandable that businesses are seeing the damage that bots can do. And they feel the need to throw up all of these walls because there's no single protection that is 100% effective against all of those.
And the internet's kind of been set up to prevent bots, right? And kind of block bots, but there's good bots that are coming along at the same time, right? So is it even more of a balancing act that's going on?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the problems, so yes, bots, there have always been good bots, and I think the traditional good bots that people think about are things like Googlebot, or Bingbot that are search engine crawlers.
Hmm.
And there is kind of the concept that, okay, I'll let these bots take my content in order for them to bring more traffic to me. Because when someone searches on Google, they can't find your website unless you allow Googlebot to crawl it.
Yeah.
And so that's like a really good example of a traditional good bot. I think what we're seeing a lot of interest in right now actually is like AI agent traffic. So we could imagine there's something like OpenClaw a couple months ago, or
Yeah.
people have their own personal agents now that want to do things like, oh, make a restaurant booking for me.
Mm.
And if you're a restaurant booking platform, now you have to distinguish between someone's like good AI agent, who's going to make one booking because it represents me, myself, versus some kind of malicious bot who might do
Mm.
something like book out all the reservations for my competitor's restaurant so that they can't get any business.
Yeah.
And that's like the same kind of scaled automated abuse that you would see in a traditional bot attack. But now you need to distinguish these against what are those good AI agents doing. So that's something that I see a lot of at work now, that people are thinking about a new class of AI agent good bot traffic,
Hmm.
and how to distinguish that from bad bot traffic, basically, that's going to do fraud and abuse on the platform.
Yeah, nice. Well, we've kind of set the landscape there. We've kind of had a little bit of an intro, but what we really want to talk about today is kind of the toolkit segment that we had a great conversation in the prep call, and you talk a lot about publicly on LinkedIn, do a lot of content and make people aware of what's going on. So, where did that start from initially? Where did you get that kind of appetite for being so open and wanting to help with knowledge sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, it's something that was surprising to me, basically, and I think I'm pretty curious. And so I think in the popular culture conception of bad actors or hackers, they're kind of like these lone wolves.
Mm,
Like there is some really brilliant guy, he's wearing a hoodie in a dark room, and he's typing out all of these custom hacks to get in somewhere.
yeah.
And really, it's not like that at all. And a lot of fraud and abuse that we see is actually like scaled by bad actor groups. That's organized crime, or it's state-sponsored actors, or it's just
Hmm.
groups of people who have got this thing down.
Yeah.
And what that means is that there is actually an entire B2B SaaS ecosystem, like bad actor to bad actor
Mm,
offerings, in which people are reselling different things. And so I gave a talk at B-Sides SF earlier this year, which covered a few of those in the bot world. There's CAPTCHA solvers. So there's a service where today, right now, you can pay like $2 and
mm,
get 1,000 CAPTCHA solves of Google's reCAPTCHA. And that just means that, okay, no one needs to, write their own custom bypass for any given CAPTCHA product. They can go to one of these vendors, and there's a bunch of these vendors who are offering CAPTCHA solving services, and they
mhm,
can pay less than 1 cent for every CAPTCHA they want to solve. And, that when I first heard about that, that kind of blew my mind, because it's like, of course, that totally makes sense.
yeah.
Just as, not everyone's people are going to go and they're going to buy, you know, Google Office Suite or
Mhm,
Microsoft Teams or something like that. They're not going to do their thing on their own. And that same dynamic, where there are a few providers who are offering value added services to bad actors, that is an entire economy that most people aren't even aware of.
mm. So
And I think,
fraud as a service offerings.
yeah, fraud as a service offerings. So like in that one, I talked about um, CAPTCHA solvers. There
Yeah.
are tools that are like anti-detect browsers. Like these are custom browsers. They're usually forked from Google Chrome or Chromium, and sometimes Firefox. And
Yeah.
they're changed in ways that make it harder for businesses and websites to detect multi-accounting. That, y- um, for example, if you're a social media site, you might notice that you had 100 accounts sign up today, and they all signed up from the same IP address, and they all
Mm.
signed up from the same version of Google Chrome, and
Yeah.
so on. But using these anti-detect browsers, which often come with like built-in VPN and proxy integrations, that might look like 100 accounts that are signing up from totally different places, from totally different browser variations, from all sorts of things that are desktop and mobile and different operating systems and so on. And so the existence of this tooling makes it a lot easier for people to scale up attacks and avoid detection.
Mm.
And this is like at the price point of like $10 a month, $20 a month, just like traditional SaaS
Yeah.
offerings that are targeted for real people.
So these are legitimate businesses, effectively, because is it illegal to set up a recapture passing platform?
I depends on your view. I think in the US at least, the CFAA, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, is actually extremely strict about basically bypassing any kind of detection.
Okay.
So I think technically under the CFAA, it is illegal in some way. In practice, no one ever gets prosecuted for this, basically.
No.
And so I think the main thing is that it's certainly a violation of the terms of service, usually
Mm.
of the things that you're bypassing.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not going to stop a bad actor.
No.
And to be fair, I think there are like um, there's always legitimate spins on these tools.
Yeah.
Like in the topic of residential proxies. So residential proxies are a tool where you can get access to the IP address of someone who's basically just an end user like yourself. And that's because there are some services that let you basically sell your internet connection. Like you install some software so that they can route some traffic through your phone or through your home internet connection.
Mm.
And that means that other people are basically buying access to use your IP address. And so for those people who are selling that access, that's just a way for them to make a little money by renting out a bit of their infrastructure.
Mm.
And on the other side, I think there are stories about doing things like market research or competitor research or even like investigative journalism where there is like a desire to protect the privacy of the end user.
Mm.
So there are lots of stories like that. Um, I think from my perspective as a fraud and risk PM, a lot of what we see is that residential proxy traffic is often bad and it's
Yeah.
correlated with some kind of account abuse. But of course, from what I see, all the things are bad. People
Yeah.
come to me because they have problems and so it's hard to know what those base rates are really.
So these mule accounts that we see a lot of in the financial sector, this is kind
Hmm.
of mule internet kind of setups.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like on the Mule side, I think like in the entire spectrum of financial fraud, I think there's similar things. Like you have Mule accounts, people who are routing that money around for people.
Mm.
But you also have on one end of the spectrum like card testing, right? There exist data breach dumps with a bunch of credit cards in them, like
Mm.
full on credit card numbers and all the information you would need. But you don't know whether those cards actually work or not. And the more cards you try and use that will fail, the more suspicious you look. So then there are like basically these data cleaning services where they'll take a big list of raw credit card information and they'll
Mm.
do what's called carding or credit card testing. And they'll basically go to like a little site and they'll try and do like a $1 charge on each
Yeah.
of these cards. Some of those will succeed, like some of those will fail because the cards have been canceled already. But some of
Yeah.
those will succeed. And now I'm going to sell to you, Matt. Here's my smaller list. It's only 100 card numbers now, but I know all of them work. And I can sell that to you for a higher price than what
Yeah.
the original list of, say, 10,000 cards, most of them are already deactivated.
So each step is industrialized. It's becoming a business that they don't do end to end. There's specialists for each part of the process.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it's fascinating to think about.
Is there any part that isn't quite industrialized yet, or is it literally you could search a service to commit the whole end to end fraud cycle?
I think it's pretty likely that most of the, like every individual step on that journey has yeah, kind of commoditized offerings. I think the one thing that you might be missing is sort of end-to-end services. Like
Mm.
today you have things that are like integration platforms for good businesses, like a Zapier or something. Here's
Yeah.
like a workflow builder where you can combine all of these steps. As far as I know, that one doesn't exist for bad actors. But I feel like every single step along the way, there are like significant ways for people to just like buy off the shelf offerings, basically.
Yeah. And how are you? I mean, you're in the industry, it's your role to be educated and up to date with what's going on. But yeah, how do you research these areas? How do you come across these systems?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting topic. So, uh, I think on the defender side, I think there's a lot of people. I try to be one of them who are sharing information about what they
Mm.
see. But then I think there's room for like the term threat intelligence is a little dramatic, but like
Yeah.
for trying to go to the source and see what's out there. And so there are certain tools which are just publicly available. Like you Google, I mentioned earlier, CAPTCHA solver. You Google
Yeah.
CAPTCHA solver and like there's 10 sites and those are totally out in the open. But a lot of the tooling that we're seeing, like anti-detect browsers, that kind of bot evasion tooling, people will like swap it on Discord servers or Telegram groups or WhatsApp groups. And so that means, it can be helpful to go lurk in these groups and see what new things are coming out.
Mm.
Sometimes those are like good, and I say good, they're interesting, they're valuable, they're bypassing my products, and it's okay. We should do some research on it. And sometimes it's like, oh, this looks like actually they just reskinned a different open source project.
Mm.
And so I think that also happens in this space. And it's hard because um, they don't exactly have like strong business reputations, or you can't check their reviews usually. So
I think I've heard somewhere there are some kind of reviews and ranking systems within these networks. Is there any legitimate uses for these kind of services that they could kind of say, "Hey, it's like it's legitimate"?
I think it depends. It's harder to say on the bot side of the house.
Hmm.
And I think that some of this is somewhat almost comes down to philosophy. Like I think I talked to a lot of people who like grew up in the early days of the internet where things are
Mm.
basically open by default.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a feature and that people can script your site and scrape data from it and so on. But I think, today there are also business owners and website operators who say, look, if you're a human, I totally want you to on my site for free. If you're a bot, like let's say you're one of the big AI labs trying to scrape my site,
Yeah.
you can go away. And I think that is ultimately like a philosophical question. Like, do you think that people should have access to the internet as a public square? Or how much do these website owners have the right to say, no, I don't want you, and then use whatever
Mm.
technical means they have to keep them out? So it turns into sort of like a cat and mouse game in that way.
Because there's a cost to these bots being on the website as well, right?
Yeah, there's totally a cost. And I think people think about like website crawling costs, like, oh, I had to take down my server because I was getting 1,000 requests from AI crawlers. And
Yeah.
I think that's like a very easy story to tell. But what a lot of businesses will not tell you is that the financial fraud is actually a lot worse, right? And that doesn't take a lot of requests. And what I mean is that uh, sometimes people talk about bots as like a volumetric problem. Like, you're
Yeah.
sending me 10 million requests per day. I must stop it because it's impossible for me to serve other people. And that's like a very clear cut case. Like, okay, that's
Yeah.
bad. You should block that. But if you have bots that are only making, say, 5 requests to your site every day, but every time they make a request, they're actually creating a fake account. They're extracting your free trial credits and then they're reselling them somewhere else. Even though that doesn't like physically stop your website from running, that makes a pretty big dent to your bottom
Mm.
line financially. And I think it's hard for businesses to even go and share this problem in public because no one wants to say, hey, last year I'm losing $1 million a year to a certain kind of bot attack,
Yeah.
partly because it's embarrassing, and partly because if you tell someone, oh, it makes bad actors think, oh, how much money could I make from this site? And it actually attracts more attention,
Mm,
which makes the problem even worse. So people are incentivized to say like, oh, like I don't have any problems. I don't have any problems. How about you?
no. I mean, we see all the time with job applications. People will say, "Oh, we've got 100,000 applications this year," and it's like, well, how many of those are bots that people can use the numbers as they want for good or for bad, right?
Yeah, and we've seen this as well. It's gotten to the point where we get on. We're hiring for our team if you're interested in fraud and risk things as well. But sometimes we'll get onto a video call with a candidate and he'll say, "Wow, you know that video was really messed up. Like the things they were saying were not matching up to how their face looked on the video.
Yeah.
They were slow. We think they might be deepfaking their video stream and." Reading off of like an AI prompt in order to answer our questions and things like that. So that goes again like every step of the way from spamming out job applications that are
Mm,
perfectly tailored to the job all the way to like actually doing the interview.
yeah. You're very good at sharing all this and educating as many people as possible. Do you think there's a risk to sharing and that bad actors could see it? Or do you think they already are aware of what's going on? It's just the fact that we need to share the lessons as best
Yeah,
we
I
can.
think that's a great question. I think w- defenders generally have more to gain by sharing.
Hmm.
And honestly, I am like fairly careful on what I share because oftentimes there are details about how certain paths are exploitable that you
Hmm.
don't want to get out. But you do want to say, hey, we're seeing certain patterns. Behind closed doors, you can do like a lot more detailed information sharing.
Yeah.
So I often talk to like the fraud and security teams at the companies that we work with and we say, hey, we're seeing this. We notice some traffic that looks like it might be related,
Hmm.
and compare notes about what's going on. I actually saw a really a great write up recently of someone had published a blog post about Reddit's
Hmm.
anti-bot and anti-spam detection tooling
Yeah.
because essentially several years ago they saw an interesting bug where it revealed more information about how those decisions were being made. And so that's cool. Um, and I think they did the responsible thing here, which is that they didn't publish this blog post when they first discovered it. Actually, they waited several years
Yeah.
before publishing that. And the reason they specifically gave is that uh, they didn't want Reddit to be overwhelmed with spam and scam content. The more you reveal about the systems, the easier it is for someone from the outside to bypass it.
Yeah. And are the closed communities that you're in, what are the kind of hot topics right now that obviously we don't want to go into too much detail, but behind closed doors, what are the areas that people are focusing on or most worried about at the moment when it comes to bot attacks?
Yeah, I think so. The bot attacks they're always going on. I think there is like an increasing amount of dedication towards anti-detect browser tooling and like how you can consistently automate things in a way that you can't be detected or even correlated. That's
Hmm.
something that's always been going on, but I think it's heated up in the last couple years because of these like AI agent use cases that are more valuable.
Yeah.
So that's one. I think there's also like funnily enough, I think there is like some there's trends in certain scam activity that go on. Um and so for example, like I think in the last couple of years we've seen a rise in what's sometimes called pig butchering, but I think
Yeah.
the term like romance impersonation is a little more easy to parse there. So a rise in that from certain locations. And
Mm.
we do see these trends because those often come out of like areas of Southeast Asia. We would often see things like Bitcoin or cryptocurrency scams coming out of Vietnam. Whereas like in other places, we also see rises in attacks. Like in the last couple months, we've seen a rise in attacks that are trying to impersonate like consumer to consumer marketplaces. So like the Etsy, the Depop,
Yeah.
like the Facebook marketplaces of the world,
Hmm.
where they're trying to scam people that are by impersonating these things and sending them like, hey, your account has been accessed, please log in to confirm some detail, and then you go and take over that account, or you do some other kind of scam. And so
Yeah.
these are very like cyclical is not the right word. They're trend driven.
Yeah.
We definitely see patterns in how popular these come up and down. And so just like being able to give people heads up, like we've been seeing this kind of thing,
Mm.
just a heads up in case you want to update certain systems that where the content matters more.
Mm. Are you seeing that as an overall trend that bad actors are moving away from systems and more targeting humans, that they've realized that no matter how strong your detection systems are, the human is the weak point?
I think that is something that is always there's always like a back and forth between these, and I think it's hard to say because oftentimes the people who deal with it are different.
Mm.
So like cybersecurity teams are working on those like automated intrusion detection and stuff like that, whereas I think a lot of the time the burden of scams that attack real humans falls on like customer support basically,
Yeah.
or trust and safety and compliance teams. And it's good for those teams to talk to each other. But what I found is like they don't always talk to each other, or they don't always share the same data about their
Hmm.
across, even within their own company, they don't share the data with all the right people. Uh,
So
so I don't know. Yeah.
would you say it's a data problem? Do you think fraud would be solved if data was communicated well and shared across siloed teams and industries?
A little bit. I think it's a little reductionist to say it's a data problem. It's almost more of a, I mean, it's like a people problem, as all things are. It's a
Mm.
people problem. It's an organizational problem. I do see it's a problem where, say, the cybersecurity team has certain KPIs and certain priorities, and
Mm.
those just don't line up with what the trust and safety team or the compliance team has. And so I do think a lot of it comes down to like establishing a company or business wide priority that these are the things that we care about and you will work together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be hard as basically like for individual contributors to say,
Mm.
we'll put our data here. Can you put your data here? And we'll connect it all together. I think that's like a cool story, but it's going to be really hard to do that without the company support for making those investments. Though I think it
Yeah.
is fully well worth it. I think like a lot of the time people will look at successful fraud attacks and say, "Oh man, we really messed it up here. Like we
Yeah.
had all the pieces and we just failed to connect the dots in time before the attack happened or before they were able to get away with the money." Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you had a fair amount of budget, what would you invest it in first along that process?
What would I invest in first? That's a good question. I really think it depends on the maturity of your systems.
Mm.
I think a lot of things come down to having like a centralized place, or at least a place where you can reasonably put together data. Not only what you're seeing and what tools that you're using are telling you about those things, but also like uh, there's a lot of talk about like agentic detection engineering and things like that. I think
Yeah.
for better or worse, many things are still down to human judgment.
Okay.
And so oftentimes there are human labels that come in, and people will actually look at something and say, okay, this looks correct or this looks wrong, and I've corrected the error, and this is why. And
Yeah.
being able to store those decisions in a place where people can see them and refer back to them and hopefully make continuous improvements to the system. That's kind of, I think, the core. If you don't have that, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. And a theoretical question: if you were
Yeah.
to set up a vendor or a startup in the fraud prevention space, you had unlimited talent, unlimited budget, something that's maybe not on the market now, but would be a game changer, what would you build?
That's an interesting one. I think there are, and so like today I'm working on bot detection. I think bots are core to certain
Yeah.
kinds of scaled fraud.
Hmm.
But what I see on the other side is that it's really hard actually for businesses, especially like SMBs up to mid market, like small medium businesses, to accurately make decisions about their risk and what's going on. And so I think there's actually probably a place for like focused consultancies to start to help
Okay.
these businesses evaluate what their fraud risk is,
Hmm.
basically. And I think the interesting bit about that is that people do not want to say, I want to spend this much money on bot detection and this much money on intrusion detection and this much money on content moderation. Like, it's really hard for people to make those kinds of like prioritization decisions because they don't know about their overall risk. And so I do think there's a place for a company to come in here, help people make those risk evaluations, and actually offer cyber insurance or fraud risk cyber combined insurance,
Yeah.
um, in which we can take like a healthy evaluation of that risk and basically present that to the business like, this is your all-in cost.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a very long journey. I don't claim that we could do it tomorrow, but I think that is where people would like to be.
Okay. Nice. Well, I mean, we could probably talk for a long time about all these points. These episodes are just bite size. What are you excited about in the fraud space? What's some good stuff that's going on that you think people should hear more about?
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, I'm working on some products. You can reach out to me directly. I'm excited about those things that are on our roadmap.
Yeah.
I am excited to see, I think, like a continuing increase in the amount of like fraud consortium information sharing, as well as like government and regulatory support for doing
Yeah.
this kind of information sharing. Because I do think that the attackers have an information advantage right now. Not only by sharing across our networks can we as defenders do better. So those are
Yeah.
things that I'm pretty excited about from like the global space of things.
Yeah.
Um, I think like from a technical perspective, I think there's two really interesting technologies that are coming down. One of them is like the verifiable credentials, like EUID wallet, in
Yeah.
which you have some kind of like mobile credential that represents your identity, and you're able to use um, cool math tricks basically to share details about that without sharing your whole identity. So you
Okay.
could present a credential that says, hey, this is a resident of California who is over the age of 18, but that receiving website would not receive anything about my name or my address or all those things that are on my driver's license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's pretty interesting. And then on the other side, I think there are some things coming down the pipe in like the telephony world about being able to do authorization and authentication using those same ways that your phone already connects to your mobile carrier in order
Yeah.
to do your service. And so in the same way that like, oh, why should someone send me a text that says, hey, confirm this thing, when they could contact, they could look up my number and talk directly to the carrier and say, hey, is this phone that's sending me this application already connected to the network? Can we
Yeah.
authorize it without, this whole like roundabout loop? And so I think that's a
Yeah.
cool way to reduce friction without like reducing security.
Nice. I think you probably nailed it on that last point. Reduce risk, but don't increase friction for the user. So, it's been an absolute pleasure, Bobbie. Where can people find out more about your content and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is the best place as far as like fraud and risk. I'm Bobbie Chen, Bobbie. Not a lot of people in the world with that name, so
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and to listeners, until next time.
yeah.
Ciao
Thank you,
for
Matt.
now. Cheers,
All
Bobbie.
right,
Ciao, ciao.
take care.
Want to hear more about fighting fraud with tech? subscribe to Leading Detection wherever you get your podcasts.